ought to fire mine up, huh?
Ma'am?
Beanie bean.
I had to change my passcode again.
You saw what time I got to do like that.
Everybody here? All righty. Are we good? How's everybody doing? Hopefully you guys hear me okay? I can never tell from up here, so there we go. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. All righty, we're going to get started. We have a dignitary tonight with us. We have Mr. Nelvin J. Trimble, who goes to Grove School, and he is going into the 4th grade. So he is big brother to Sherry Kay and Opal Rose, and his parents are Josh and Gretchen Trimble, and he's going to open our meeting for us. So I'm going to turn it over to the big guy here.
I call this meeting to order.
Go down front here so you can take pictures. All right, so hey, you take pictures. You're going to watch over long.
Here we go.
I promise you. All right, good job, buddy. All righty, so let's call the roll.
Matthews,
Here.
Ingalls,
Here.
Flood,
Here.
Bolt,
Here.
Rutherford,
Here.
Seymour,
Here.
Salter.
Here.
We have one.
All right, very good. And we're going to do our invocation. I give Pastor Joe, I think it's yours, isn't it? Yes. Yes, sir. Come on up. Come on up.
Well, Father, we just want to say thank you today. Lord, it is an honor to stand before you to pray over what transpires today that has an impact upon this community. And Lord, by virtue of even having prayer being part of the first part of their agenda, signifies, God, that we're asking you to lead us and to guide us. Lord, you said in your word, if we would acknowledge you in all our ways, that you would direct our path. Lord, we ask you and ask for your direction. I pray today, God, for our leaders that come from diverse areas of our community, that your hand would be upon them, that God, that you would give them wisdom in the direction in which this community should be taken. Lord, I pray that your hand would be upon everything that transpires today. Lord, I pray over the city manager. I pray over the mayor, oh God. Lord, that you would cause this community to be in unity. Lord, I pray over the police chief, Chief Mason, oh God, that your hand would be upon him and all those that serve underneath him. Lord, I pray over our fire department, over our chief and those that serve with him, oh God. Lord, we know that righteousness exalts a nation. And if righteousness can exalt a nation, surely righteousness can exalt a city. And so, Lord, we ask today your blessings upon this meeting. And Lord, we will give you praise and honor for all that you do. And we thank you today in Jesus' mighty name. Amen, amen, amen.
Thank you, sir. Flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 1 is citizen participation. Same drill as always, 3 minutes per person, 12 minutes per topic. And we probably would respond back in commissioner comments towards the end of the meeting. And we've got a pretty good sized meeting tonight, so you may have to stick around a little bit. All righty, first up is Rob Morris. How you doing, Rob?
Pretty good. Good evening. Try and be brief. Something that's very important in this town, and it's found in our city code of ordinance, for anybody that wants to write it down, Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 1, Section 2, 317B. And it states, no section of this article is intended, nor should any of this section of this article be construed to grant a right of entry upon the premises of a place of public accommodation to any person who is drunk, disorderly, vagrant, loitering, begging, disturbing the peace, soliciting, selling, advertising, vending goods, or presenting himself, for entry in any matter, state of dress, demeanor, or condition for which the general public would be excluded. With that one simple ordinance right there, you can clear out Main Street right now. You can clear out the whole town because it's for the whole town. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to know what you're going to do about the crime and about the homeless that are here to abuse our town with that one city ordinance that we have not been following. Next, let's jump to something else. The Expo Committee. This month's meeting was canceled. And then all of a sudden now they have a public hearing, or not a public hearing, a special call meeting, so there's no public comments, which is kind of strange because how did they pay the bills for the rodeo when they didn't have a meeting? So maybe y'all could answer that one. As far as Shawnee Forward, when I was at the Contract Review Committee, which the media saw it too, so it's not just me, but it's weird when you have somebody sitting in a chair up here that's nodding to the CEO of that company to know if they should vote yes or no on something. When that person in that chair, and I do not mean to point at y'all three, it just happened to be a chair over there, shouldn't be doing anything but what's in the best interest of Shawnee, instead of asking the CEO of that organization, is this what you want? Thumbs up, is this what you want? That's not right. So y'all shouldn't vote on that contract at all tonight. The next thing is the homeless. How is it that the contract for Shawnee Forward doesn't state that they're to do anything with the homeless, yet they're having private meetings right now, apparently, with the Homeless Alliance? Where in there does that say they get to have a say? I thought it was more for the people to decide. So if y'all could answer that, I'd appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to walk away slowly because I brought those rules again that were read, where before the next person comes up here, it's your chance to address anything or ask clarification of them. So I'll walk away slowly in case y'all need to.
Next up, Mr. Rick Young. How you doing, Rick?
First off, I am Rick Young, creator, author of the name Dunbar Heights, and its overall concept, creation, significance, and historical value to the city of Shawnee community, because all history matters. This is a very important night, and we've seen a lot of changes over the last 2 years that are very significant for us. The origin of Dunbar Heights was born out and derived for the black high school, so named after Paul Laurence Dunbar, the famous black poet. Situated in Shawnee, Oklahoma, in Seminole Addition and located at the corner of South Union and Bentley, is now Dunbar. Heights was taken for the northern community, identified as Clark Heights. As you exit I-40 onto Highway 177 southbound, hence, Dunbar Heights was so named as the southernmost geographic area and the entry point first seen from the south, where blacks were segregated and bounded by these streets. This was the original Dunbar Heights when it first got started. I departed Shawnee in 1997, and there are some things that happened and changed for the good, and we're working on it today, and that's why we're here tonight, to even go further. Those streets, now listen to the streets, was Forest Street, east and west, South Union, South Bell, South Philadelphia, South Oklahoma, South Minnesota, the 800 block of South Pennsylvania, Bentley, which is now Dunbar, Farrell, Bluff, Hayes, east and west, and South Broadway on the western boundary. Now, our town, we had some demarcation line, and that demarcation line has moved a couple of times. Now, the first families to cross this so-called color line for the residential housing, there are 3 people in our community that were leading. First was a young lady and her husband. Her name was Archie and Lurleen Hill on Broadway Street that moved west. They would be Kathy's Kitchen. And then there was Carl and Betty Young, which is my mom and my dad. They moved west past Beard, true demarcation line. And my brothers and sisters, they will tell you that we met Archie Bunker before there was an All in the Family, but we survived. In early 2000, Dunbar Heights was expanded geographically, and there was a $10,000 assessment and action plan that was had via the city of Shawnee and the newly formed group, which brings us to tonight's Juneteenth Proclamation and the furtherance of the predicted tectonic paradigm shift of Shawnee America, Citizen Pottawattamie Nation, and Pottawattamie County for the good of the whole. And I'll leave you these words before we vote. Let's educate ourselves. Let's vet. Let's voice our opinion and go to the polls and do what we have had blood and treasures lost over, that we might have this right. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Patrick Winsett. Mr. Winsett, microphone is all yours. How are you doing tonight?
Good, how are y'all?
Doing great.
Thanks for having me up. This is from what I sent you guys and ladies this week, or past week. I just wanted to just read it out loud, that way it's on public record. Shawnee Firefighters Local 206, we as a union have significantly safety concerns with the continued lack of manpower that the Shawnee Fire Department is currently experiencing and has experienced for many years now. The city, as well as our call volume, is constantly growing, and as a result, the dynamic nature of the job is evolving as well. Unfortunately, fire department staffing has only evolved by a mere 3 suppression personnel since 1978. We have provided the manual requirements by NFPA at the bottom of this list, which is 1710, which is 14 is minimum manning for a initial response to a structure fire. That's a 2,000 square foot house, 2-story, and that's if there's not an aerial device. If there's an aerial device, there'll be 15 persons. Larger or more complex incidents require additional personnel as listed below. Although the single-family residential fire is somewhat considered an entry-level fire incident, we are still at times extremely taxed to safely operate at these fires. Any large-scale fire incident, such as one of the many factories, Shawnee Mill, or a big box store, to name a few, would be a huge undertaking. In the following information, we have compiled data about responses for Shawnee as well as other cities with larger populations. You will notice that we have responded to more calls than 3 cities that are more densely populated, and these cities also operate with more manpower than we do. Fire Station 2 operates most days with 2 personnel, which is half the NFPA standard. Recommendation is a 4-person engine company. Chief Whitman, along with the past city administration, had a plan in works to add 3 more personnel this fiscal year and to get our total manning up to 19 per shift in the near future. There were 49 suppression members in the budget for the last fiscal year. This year, the number was cut down to 48. This information is available online in last year's fiscal year breakdown, where it says there are 49 FTE in the suppression. There was some talk at the last commission meeting to shrink our response district, so we have compiled the statistics on the calls outside of our city limits. During the fiscal year 2021, we responded to 328 calls outside our city limits, which is 5.5% of our 5,917 total responses. This is not a significant number of responses, considering those same citizens do come and shop in Shawnee and contribute to our sales tax. There was also a statement made that the city gave us a COVID bonus, which is true. However, this bonus money was money from the federal government through the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan Act, which could only be used for certain COVID-related things and was not additional money out of our city budget. Is that it? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was it for citizen participation. All right, item 2, consider approval of consent agenda. Anybody want to pull anything off consent agenda? If not, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Daniel and Travis. All righty, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 2. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 3. There it is, presentation by Animal Control to present Pet of the Week. I bet she brought the rooster. No, looks like a little puppy dog. Not very old. How are you guys tonight?
Good. Great. This is Legend. He's about 10 weeks old. We think he's a shepherd mix, but we're not really sure. His adoption fee will be, never mind, we're waiving the adoption fees. It'd be a $25 spay and neuter deposit and a prepaid rabies vaccine. But currently at the shelter, we have 43 dogs, 6 cats, 1 rooster. We've had 15 adoptions this month and 1 reclaimed.
Very cool. Is he part of that big bunch you got in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
We have
hopefully
a
you
lot of
find him a
puppies.
home soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You too. All righty, item 4, we have Mayor Proclamation on Commemorate Juneteenth in Dunbar Heights Historic Neighborhood. So I will come down and Timmy, you can bring up everybody you want to bring up, and we'll do this. Some of you have to come down this side. Everybody, there we go. There we go. Now we get it. All right. So we have got a proclamation here. We're at Juneteenth in Dunbar Heights Historic Neighborhood. We did this Saturday after the parade. We want to do it again tonight. So whereas Juneteenth is the oldest known annual observance commemorating the abolishment of slavery in the United States of America, the Juneteenth Independence celebration dates back to June 19, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger led the Union soldiers into Galveston, Texas. It was there that the Union soldiers delivered the news that the Civil War had ended and enslaved black Americans within all states were free. And whereas Juneteenth became a celebration of freedom, community, and culture, today Juneteenth takes on a symbol of pride in black American experiences and ancestral roots. And whereas the Dunbar Heights Historic Neighborhood is home to a long-standing tradition of Shawnee's black American heritage, and whereas the city of Shawnee seeks to observe this historic anniversary with the Dunbar Heights Historic Neighborhood in the spirit of camaraderie and equality for all citizens, and whereas the Juneteenth celebration embodies the American ideals of freedom, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as they extend to all people. And now therefore I, Ed Bolt, Mayor of the City of Shawnee, Oklahoma, by the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim this 20th day of June 2022 to be Commemorate Juneteenth and the Dunbar Heights Historic Neighborhood. Good. So, there you go. And there's your copy. Do you have anybody to get you a picture or some photograph? Would somebody be kind enough to, I think Mark's on it for you. Come on right up, Mark. Very good. Thank you guys very much. Alrighty, item 5 is presentation of the 2021 Performator by Crawford and Associates. So Mr. Frank Crawford, I think, is here. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Mayor, thank you.
I think I'll try to stick to the 3-minute version of this, seeing that the agenda is pretty loaded tonight. I'm sure it's also appreciated by the ones that are following me that have heard this speech before. Again, my name is Frank Crawford. I'm with the firm of Crawford & Associates. We're the CPA firm that assists the city in putting together its annual financial statements that you have audited. However, if you've ever tried to open that 130-page document and read the audit, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially if you're not finance gifted or an accountant. So what we've done over the years is a way to explain the financial position and health and success of the city is to do this thing that we call the Performator, which I sent a copy. I think you all have it electronically. What the Performator is basically an analysis of all the different financial trends that are very important to the government, like cash flow, debt capacity, revenue capacity, and things of that nature, and then attempts to weight them and score them so that I could say to you on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we doing? With 10 being excellent financial health and success, and a 0 or a 1 being poor financial health and success. And so you have about a 30-page document in front of you that really one page kind of sums up everything, which is page 5. And that's the overall Performator rating. And we've tracked this for about 10 years for the city to kind of see how the overall health and success of the city has fluctuated. And so on page 5, you can kind of see a couple of ways to read this. There are pictures, a graph or a pie chart or something on the left. Some people like to read the narrative, and then other people like to see a score in green, yellow, or red that kind of shows good, cautionary, or not so good. This year, we actually raised our overall score from a 6.4 to an 8.1. That's a pretty significant leap. There were several factors that actually improved your health and success for fiscal 21. One, notwithstanding, being the extra money that we're getting from the federal government. When they just give you cash and say that you can pretty much use this for any municipal purpose, that pretty much improves your financial health and success. And so the CARES money was that part of that year. In fiscal 22, you'll probably see another bump up because of the ARPA money that's coming in, and maybe even a little bit into fiscal 23. But we've had a great year as far as financial health and success. And I can take that 8.1 and break it down into 3 different components. I can look at your health, which is what I call financial position. That's one score. We also look at your performance for the year to see whether we had a good year or a bad year. And then we also measure what we call capability or sustainability. In other words, do we control a lot of our revenue streams? Do we have a good debt load? Do we have capacity to either issue more debt or look to other revenue streams? And so on the right, you can kind of see in the narrative that 8.1 is made up of a financial position or a health score of a 6.6, the financial performance of a 9.8. In other words, the 7 or 8 financial performance ratios, you nearly scored a perfect 10 across the board. That rarely ever happens. And then as far as capacity, we stay constant at about a 7.3. So overall, those average with some weighting out to an 8.1. And that's probably the best year that we've had in the history that we've been tracking this over the last 10. Much improved over the last few years where we've kind of been struggling with either financial position or financial success. But now we've got our health or our position number up above a 5 at the 6.6. And then we had a great performance during fiscal 21. So those things combined along with our 7.3 on capability has got us into the 8s. From a perspective standpoint, the highest score in the history of this Performator, which is about 22 years now, is a 9.1, and it's only happened once, and it's a government that's outside of Oklahoma. It's actually a government from Georgia. So an 8.1 is probably one of the higher scores that we saw not only this year, but certainly one of the higher scores in Oklahoma. But again, you have to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because remember, there was a lot of assistance that doesn't replicate itself every year that was in fiscal 21. We're going to see a little bit of that in 22 and a little bit in 23, but after that, that gift money goes away. This ARPA and CARES money is kind of a once-in-a-generation thing, so I doubt we'll see it again at this level of significance. So we need to be careful of how we proceed with that. I'd like to see a hover somewhere in the 7s consistently. A 5 is what I consider satisfactory, but that's, again, the minimum. If you can stay somewhere in the 7s, that's very good. An 8 is extremely good, and of course, if you ever get in the 9s, you're talking about record capability. But as far as the June 30 fiscal 21 year, you probably had your best year of the last 10 as far as combined health and success. Now, the reason there's 29 more pages of this is that every ratio that I look at has a page and has its own little score, so you can kind of see which ratios look good and which ones really don't. But it's a pretty simple process because the score, if it's in green, that's great. If it's in yellow, that's sort of okay. And if it's in red, that's one that we need to improve upon. But there's explanations on each one of these pages as to why the score is where they're at. So if you're suffering from insomnia some night and you want to go to bed quickly and go to sleep, you might want to read through this. Better yet, go get the 130-page document. That's the audited financials. That'll actually put you to sleep much faster. But this is at least a little bit interesting, a little bit of coffee table reading, but let you digest this, and I'll answer any questions that you have now, or if you have questions later, we'll come back and do this again. Fiscal 22 is about over here in a couple weeks. That means we're going to have another set of numbers. It's going to get audited again, and once that happens, we'll come back with another one of these to see how fiscal 22 looks in comparison to everything else.
Okay.
Questions?
I know you probably don't have these numbers right in front of you, but just kind of your best estimate. What, without the CARES or the ARPA dollars, how great would that have affected our rating?
You know, I would say it would probably dropped you somewhere into the 7s because really the only assistance that we had in fiscal 21 was the CARES money, which we used to obviously reimburse ourselves for public safety expenses, personnel costs, and so I'm thinking that probably wouldn't, without that money, it wouldn't have a ton of effect. What's really helped you more than anything is the sales tax. You know, you've got really two streams of revenue that you rely on for everything, and that's utility revenue on the municipal authority side and sales tax revenue on the city side. You can control the municipal authority revenue because you get to set the rates and fees, you know, without having to go to a vote of the people. Sales tax is the one that's kind of tricky because it's outside of your control. But for the last couple of years, in fact, ever since COVID hit, you've probably been a net gainer as far as sales and use tax as opposed to a net user. And that's the opposite of what I had actually predicted was going to occur. So you don't want to hire me as your economist because I'm kind of backwards on it. But as long as we can sustain that sales tax growth, I mean, if we can grow sales tax 2, 3, 4% a year, that's a couple $1 million of extra revenue. But again, at some point in time, retail's maxed out. You can only get so much done within your city limits as far as retail is concerned. I don't think we're there yet, but again, you know, you've got room to grow. So that's kind of the lifeblood of the city. We kind of rise and fall with utility revenue and sales tax revenue. And then the rest of everything else just makes up a tiny percentage, probably less than 10% of everything else, even those grants and assistance with the federal dollars. So I don't think the score would have changed a little bit, but it would have dropped somewhat into the 7s.
Thank you. Daniel, do you have some?
Yeah, I got two.
Sure.
You talked a little bit, answer that question. Obviously, the CARES Act helps us. But in comparing our position, and you mentioned this briefly, comparing our position to other cities in the state, but also in the country, we come out looking strong. Then you gave a caveat about the CARES money. My question would be, compare CARES money that's gone to other communities. Like, is it an equal playing field where we're still in a strong position?
Yeah. I get it.
You know what I mean? That's
Sure.
My question is, how is that raising our score compared to others? Are they seeing the same type of?
Yeah, everybody's seeing pretty much the same bump. It's really size related. I mean, the ratios and everything that calculates is based on population and other factors. So even though you may get less CARES money than in some other larger government, you still got the same perspective, the same ratio of dollars. So everybody's seeing a bump right now. But those bumps still haven't ever equated to a record score on the Performator, because at the end of the day, if you got $500,000 of CARES money and your budget's $40 million, $500,000 of $40 million isn't really a big deal.
Sure. So if everybody got a 0.5 bump,
right,
that's kind of across the board and doesn't, like, it's still fair to say our position compared to other communities in the state improved.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, gotcha. My other question is maybe asking you to play economist, and you've made clear that that's not your strong suit. We have seen record sales tax or very strong sales tax. How much of that, in your opinion, is real growth, and how much of it is, if a bag of groceries goes from $20 to $30, we're getting more sales tax because it's a percentage of the sale?
Yeah, well, again, I take my economic analysis with a grain of salt. I had initially thought that when COVID hit, that we would all shelter and we would buy less things, we would do with less. I thought there'd be less money flushing through the economy. Of course, I didn't realize CARES money was going to happen, ARPA money was going to happen. And so as that money flushed out to the economy, what everybody did is we sheltered all right, but then we bought locally rather than traveling to Oklahoma City, or we would just go online and buy. So that local money has stayed local. And I think what's happened is, although we were probably on a good 5-year track to buying more and more things electronically through the internet, I think it took that 5-year time frame that I thought it was going to occur, and it shoved it into about an 8-month time frame where everybody got comfortable with that. So I'm kind of hoping that now that everybody is much more comfortable with buying online or buying locally, that we will continue to get that sales and use tax. But again, probably the biggest factor is retail growth. The more shops that you have that attract more people to shop in your local area, the more revenue you're going to see. I don't think we're seeing the inflationary effect in this audit yet, or this set of financials. I think you're going to see that inflationary effect more in 22's financials, and probably going forward if it hovers around 9 or 10% where it is. But yes, that's once inflation gets back down to 2% or so, yeah, you're going to see a little bit of an impact on sales. We'll just get less. But I don't have a real good feel. I do think, though, that now that everybody's much more comfortable with online ordering, that's going to sustain itself going forward. But again, at the end of the day, it's about what attracts people to the city and what attracts people to buy locally. So,
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
anything else?
Anybody got anything else? You guys are quiet on this side. No questions? It looks like good news.
Okay, appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Yeah,
so
good
much.
year. Let's
Yeah.
see if we can sustain it for a while and
right.
reap its benefits.
Yeah,
So,
bring good news next year.
okay, all right, thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, item 6 is consideration of a budget amendment for Fund 001, General Fund, to appropriate revenue for expenditures, police vehicle repairs, police grant expense, city manager services, legislative consulting services, and fire vehicle repairs. And Mr. Bucell is up. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As you stated, this budget amendment is for the things you mentioned. Insurance recovery that we receive off of police vehicles that happen to be wrecked. We get that from OMAG and need to utilize it. We've received a police grant, Edward Burns Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, approximately $28,000. Our interim city manager, Mr. Benson, his services utilized early on in this year. We never appropriated money for that, so we're going back and doing that. Our consulting services for Latham Consulting Group and Dunnington Consulting, approximately $40,000 that was approved previously. Getting some appropriations for that, and the fire department. They've had some vehicle maintenance repair costs that need to be appropriated for, about $45,000. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Anybody got questions? You must have explained it really well. I think you're up next, though, right? So you might as well just stick around. Okay. Need a motion on item 6.
I move we approve item 6.
I'll second.
Travis and Cammy. All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 6. We'll call the question. Motion Motion passes 7-0. Item 7 is consideration or approval of the City of Shawnee budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Jacob's up again.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, so this is a resolution to adopt, what's that?
Joe sneezed and he said bless you.
To adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And this is only excluding SMA and SAA, which we'll do later on.
In their meetings. Okay. Anybody got any questions? I know we've been through this a couple times. If no questions, we'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Okay. And Darren. All right, motion and second to approve item 7. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8, consideration of resolution adopting the budget for the City of Shawnee, Oklahoma for the period of July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, finding all things requisite and necessary have been done in preparation and presentation of the budget. And Jacob, it's your night.
Well, to adopt the resolution, I believe. Is this, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, so we're just adopting what we've already voted on. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the resolution.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Daniel and Travis, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution approving and adopting the budget for the City of Shawnee, Oklahoma for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, finding all things requisite and necessary have been done in preparation and presentation of said budget.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 8. We will call that question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 9 is presentation on public safety protection districts and general obligation bonds by Bank of Oklahoma Financial Securities and Mr. Chris Gander. No, it is not Chris Gander.
Jacob Foose,
It's
Assistant
Jacob
City
Foose.
Manager.
We know
Yes.
you.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, as you know, recent discussions around fire department funding has included a request for additional information on the newly enacted public safety protection districts now authorized for the state of Oklahoma. To present on that is Mr. Chris Gander from BOK Financials. I'll turn it over to him now.
Thank you, sir. I knew I saw him here.
Hello, everybody. Chris Gander. You also have Alan Brooks, Public Finance Law Group. Jacob Coleman. He's our intern for the summer from Tulsa University. So, first council meeting he's come to with me. So, let's start with what Frank Crawford had said. There's two revenue streams. So you all have two revenue streams historically, but there's a third that you've not utilized, which is property tax. So as it relates to municipalities, particularly in other states, you have the sales tax, you have the utility system revenues, and you have property tax. In Oklahoma, we're the only state where cities don't get any property tax to operate. It's the only way a city can get any property tax historically is to go out and issue what's called general obligation bonds. And so a lot of communities do that. I say a lot, but more and more seem to be doing that. All the school districts. So as it relates to taxing rates, and we'll get into this, you have this presentation here, but the school district gets an operational levy, the county gets an operational levy, the VOTEC gets an operational levy, and then they also will do bonds on top of that. So a lot of people, particularly your citizens, think, well, we pay $1,000 a year in property tax, and they just assume some of that goes to the city, but none of it goes to the city. So effective November 1 of this past year, a law went into effect that created a law that will allow for these public safety districts. So you flip to the first page, I'm not going to read through that, but that's simplifying a multi-page bill, kind of saying what all the law is intended to address. And if you're creating something new, there's a lot of intricacies that go into how does that revenue come in, how does it get collected, how does it get distributed, who's in charge of that. So if you all want great detail, you can just go on to, there's a Oklahoma legislature, you can go in there and track it. It's a bill tracker. You can go in there and actually get the whole bill and read through it. But ultimately, we'll go kind of through the high points and compare that to GO bond, because historically that's all you've been able, that's the only way you've been able to access the property tax. So key things, just like a GO bond, it has to be passed by the citizens. 60% is the pass rate. So if you get 59% approval rate, it means it fails. And that's the same with school districts. Their bonds have to pass by 60%. Assessment of no greater than 5 mills. I know that doesn't mean anything to you at this moment, but as we get further in here, you'll see what 5 mills means and then how it compares to other taxes. Proceeds can be used for, you can read A, B, C, D, and E, but maintaining public safety equipment, purchasing vehicles, benefits for employees, salaries for emergency medical service, and funding in medical emergency medical services. And then the key thing I would say is that, is it worth doing? What does it bring in? Projected annual revenues for Shawnee. So what I'm saying here is if you had a one mill levy, and I need to add here, no one's done one of these yet.
Right.
So it's not because it's just too new. I mean, to do an election, you have to pick an election date, you have to have your resolutions passed. It's either 60 or 75 days. You have to have it in advance. You have to have the election board. So part of it's just timing. There's certainly communities all around the state right now contemplating using these. We just haven't had one go all the way through yet. So back to that, 1 mill would generate 200,000, 2 mills 400,000, on down to the bottom. 5 mills would generate 104,000, and that would be on your current net assessed valuation. It should go up each year, assuming the property values in the community go up each year, which historically they've gone up by about 3.5%. That million should go up by about 3%. So it'd be $1,030,000 in year 2, $1,060,000, so on and so forth. So it would continue to grow. Jacob asked me a good question. When would we get the tax? Well, it's a pretty long lag time because they're wrapping up everything for the bills that'll go out in the fall. Then you pay half your taxes in December, property taxes, and the second half is due 3 months later. We've already missed that run. So the earliest you would start getting taxes, if you start, it would be December of 2023. So that's a kind of in a nutshell, the key points I think I would want to know if I were in your seat. Now compare that to general obligation bond. GO bonds have to be passed by voters only by 50% instead of 60%. Assessment does not have a limitation. Proceeds can be used only for capital projects. No salaries, no benefits, and it's pretty restrictive. If you're saying we're going to pay streets, and we want to authorize $10 million of streets, and the other opposite thing is with a public safety district, you're saying we're going to assess this tax rate. We're going to assess 5 mills. With a GO bond, you don't get to say the tax rate. You're saying we are going to authorize the issuance of $5 million of debt. And then it's our job to do all the calculations in advance, say, okay, based on that, this is where we think the tax rate's going to come in. But if half the citizens moved out of Shawnee and property tax fell in half, that just means that our projections are going to be wrong and the rates are going to double. That's why they call them unlimited tax GO bonds. That's why it's a low interest rate, because they're purchasers of those debts think they're really secure. But back to the street, you can't just say we're paving Main Street. You have to say we're paving Main Street from 1st to 7th. You need to identify, is it 70%? 70%, and then the other 30%, you can't go build a fire station. You'd still have to use it on streets. So a very alike project. So projected bond capacity, very similar. I mean, if you think about it, 5 mils is going to bring in 5 mils more would. So if I said your 5 mil public safety district would bring in $1 million, if you did a 10-year bond issue at 5 mils, you'd get about $10 million worth of projects. So once again, you have that growth. So that growth and the net assessed valuation would bring in enough to pay for that interest on that bond issue. Same thing, the tax collections would begin the same, except you could sell a bond in advance and you'd get the money sooner. But it's also going to expire. A bond issue is when the bonds pay off, the levy goes away. So it's not a permanent. That's one thing I'm not sure I talked about on the Public Safety Center. It's once again, they haven't been done. We think you could put a termination date in there, or you could be silent on it and it would just go on further, or you could specifically state this goes on in perpetuity. So that's another thing that would need to be decided. So I'll get into this a little bit further, but the next page, it's just kind of some of this I touched on, but just for a graphical representation, it's page 3. Your net assessed valuation in 2000 was 99 million, and then you can see it just goes up each year. You can see you had a couple negative years, but as of 2021, you're at 200 million of net assessed valuation. What does that mean? It's not exactly this, but if you move the decimal over, multiply that by 10, the total market value of all the property in Shawnee is $2 billion. That's the net assessed valuation is a calculation that the assessor uses to help us with tax rates. But the market value is $2 billion. So if you go down to the bottom, you all have historically grown at 3.49%. And in my numbers, we're just trying to be a little bit more conservative, and we're using 3%. The next page, which is also the last page, shows what the tax rates have been. So 2000, the total tax rate, if you lived in Shawnee and were in Shawnee School District, was 97.19. And you can see actually Shawnee had a levy at that point at 2.5. Judgments can go on there and are divided over 3 years. You guys, I think if you went back another 5 or so years, you were up to about 5 at one point. I don't know if you had a small bond issue that fell off over 20 years ago, but 97.19, of that 2.5 city, 59.7 school district, 20.81 the county, and 14.18. Go all the way to today, 21 years later, the city's at 0. You can see the city's been at 0 for 15 years. School district's at 62, county's at 22.81, VOTEX 15.18, and you're at 100.76. So it's up a little bit, but very, very minimally. And it's kind of fluctuated up and down, but right in that range of 100 mils. So on a $50,000 house, your tax would be $503.80. On $100,000, $1,180. You go up to a $250,000 house, your tax bill is $2,922. Obviously, ballpark math, you double that or add something together, you can come up with what would be on pretty much any house. So if you added 5 mils to that, what would the effect be? On a $50,000 house, you'd be going from $503.80 to $528.80, so you'd be adding $25. So effectively, 25 on a 50,000, 55 on a 100,000, and so on as you work your way up to the right. You see those variance increases on each one. And that'd be the same whether, 5 mils from a bond issue or 5 mils from a public safety center. So I know that's pretty, and you guys do have a long agenda, I noticed that, but that was pretty quick, but those are the highlights. So this was just kind of round one. If you guys want us to give you more information or want to start exploring the public safety district, we'll come back, run numbers, and help you proceed how you see fit.
Okay. Anybody got any questions?
I have one, but I think you explained it. I was reading a little bit, and if anyone wants to read it, there's an interesting article on, it's about a year old, but Fox 23 out of Tulsa, where they talked to Mayor Bynum about it.
Mm-hmm.
And looking historically now, I think, because he had a line that said, while many municipalities are expected to raise property taxes to obtain additional funding for public safety, Bynum is instead proposing a shift on how the city collects, or what they collect gets spent. So Tulsa must have mills already out there,
They probably do.
as opposed to Shawnee doesn't.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it looks like they're going to adjust and pay their bonds out over a longer period of time and pull some of this into.
Yeah.
We historically have not since.
And that's something I didn't get into here because we just, but we represent a lot of cities
Sure.
around Oklahoma City, and most, it seems like 15 mills is kind of just something that maybe Oklahoma City said it and a lot have followed, but City of Moore's around 15 mills. They issue a bond, and I'm going to get into the bonds a little more than you may want to, but you have to have level principal payments. So when you issue a bond issue, your first year has the highest debt service payment, and then the next year's a little bit lower, and the next year's a little bit lower, and the next year's a little bit lower. At the same time, as you saw, your net assessed valuations doubled in 20 years. So you have this ever decreasing debt service payment being divided it over an ever increasing net assessed valuation. So that tax rate goes down year after year after year. And so to compensate for that, school districts as well as cities will come up with a long-term plan. They'll have an election for, say, $20 million worth of bonds, but then they'll issue 2 million bonds every year for 10 years, and that gets you the 20 million. But by doing that, they're able to keep their levy at the 15 mils. Once again, because you can't set that levy rate, you got to kind of issue the debt to cause it to do that. So Oklahoma City stays at 15 mils, Moore stays at 15 mils, Yukon's gone up and down, Midwest City is a little over 10 mils, Nichols Hills, it's always interesting because while it's an affluent community, they don't have any sales tax. Unlike you all, I mean, everything's in Oklahoma City. It's surrounding them, but it's not in their municipality. So for them to get a lot of the infrastructure that you all might pay for with sales tax, they've had to do with property tax. So their property tax is always maintained around 30 mils. But back to answer your question, sure, that's what they're doing. I think Tulsa's the same.
So just making
They've
sure I'm
had
reading the
long-term
chart
strategic
correctly, we haven't had any mills in Shawnee since '07 was the last year we had any.
Yeah, and that's like,
And
I mean,
so
that was a de minimis, yeah.
The highest we've had since was in 2000, that was 2.5.
Correct.
Compared to other communities that are 15.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Forgive me if you explained this and I didn't understand, but some of our current needs would require both public safety district and general obligation bonds. Would it be feasible to split and do one of each, or do you have to pick one or the other?
You could do either. I think that's you got to get your citizens to buy into what you're doing and think that it's worth their money to do either or both. So I think it's just a political, this is where we want to target, whether it's 10 mils or 12 mils, and this is how we want to divide it. We want so much to be a public safety center because it makes sense, because that would be used for potentially non-capital projects. I mean, because that's the restriction with bonds. I mean, it's got to be kind of a physical asset versus the others can be used for operational.
Right. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It doesn't matter if you got the big shiny building if you got nobody to put in it.
That's very good point.
Yeah.
And we've seen where they've passed a GO bond and they've had to pass a sales tax to pay for the salaries to take care of the jail, for example.
Any other questions? You good? Benny, you good?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, y'all.
It's good seeing you again. All righty, item 10, consideration of agreement with Central Oklahoma Community Action Agency, Central Oklahoma Transit System for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Mr. Foose.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. This is an annual agreement that we do with COCA and their transportation arm, COTS, to provide public transportation services to the people of Shawnee. Each year they submit a funding proposal which is then reviewed by the Community Service Contract Review Committee. This year, COCA's proposal was a request to increase funding from $75,000 a year to $85,000 a year. Following city staff's recommendation, the committee approved recommending to the city commission funding level of $80,000. City staff recommends this item for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody got any questions? We don't have any questions. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Move to approve item 10, following staff's recommendation.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
second.
Thank you, sir. So Daniel and Mark, we will we'll call the question on item for approval of item 10 then. Motion passes 7-0. Item 11 is consideration of agreement with Shawnee Forward for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Jacob.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, this is a similar agreement to the last one, but this is with Shawnee Forward to provide critical economic development services to our community. Shawnee Forward requested an increase of funding from $295,000 to just over $323,000. In addition to that, they requested $102,000 to be used for an incentive program. Again, it went to the Community Service Contract Review Committee. Along with staff's recommendation, they made a recommendation to the City Commission to maintain the level of funding at $295,000 and to not include the additional funding for the incentive program. They also approved a recommendation to implement some minor changes to the agreement language. That is included in the memo, and it's also included in the agreement as proposed to the Commission this evening. I did want to highlight the funding source for this comes from a permanent 1-cent sales tax approved by the voters in 1999. 7/8 of 1% is dedicated for capital improvement, economic development, and debt service. The other 1/8 of 1% is divided equally between police and fire. With that, city staff recommends approval of the item, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All righty. So we were able to get contract language negotiated to everybody's satisfaction then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve, sir.
Travis. All righty. I'll be happy to make the second. So we have a motion and a second for approval of item 11 with the staff recommendation. We will call the question. We have 6 ayes and 1 abstention. This motion passes. Item 12, consideration of agreement with Community Renewal, Pottawattamie County for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Mr. Boosh, you're up again, sir.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Similar to the last two agreements, but slightly different. In previous years, the city's contracted with Safe Events for Families, also known as SEF, to provide community events. In looking towards fiscal year 2023, SEF is focusing on alternative critical community events, and so that opened up an opportunity of which Community Renewal submitted an application to provide the services of the events Boo on Bell and Downtown Christmas Parade. In presenting to the Community Service Contract Review Committee, Community Renewal requested the same level of funding that SEF received in the prior year, which is $65,000. The committee made a recommendation to the City Commission to approve this, and city staff also recommends approval of the item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Anybody got questions? No questions. I don't see any down there. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, thank you. Mark
I'll second.
and Cammie. All righty, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 12. We will call the question. Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 abstention. Item 13, consideration of an amendment to agreement for engineering services with Holloway, Updike, and Bellin, Inc., HUB, for Canic and Georgia gravity relief lines. Mr. Barkheimer.
Yes,
how are you,
sir. Pretty well. How are you, Mr. Mayor?
Doing great.
So as you said, this is for an amendment for a design services contract we have with Holloway, Updike, and Bellin. As my memo stated, the amendment is actually a reduction to the contract scope and therefore a reduction to Hub's price for us. So we're reducing their contract. Since we're not moving forward with the Georgia Street relief line, we're reducing the design contract by $22,500, making their new contract $62,500, down from the original $85,000. So staff does recommend approval of the item, but with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Okay. How about questions?
Jim, maybe just so everyone knows about not moving forward with Georgia, can you explain that
Yeah.
process and the why?
Yeah, so when we did the initial preliminary design, we checked the flow line of the lift station and we checked the flow line of the connection point downstream, and the math checked out, and so we moved forward. But when we got a topographic survey, the train tracks that the line crossed was lower, not a ton, but a little bit lower than we anticipated. And with the railroad standards for cover that they have to have over the utility crossing, it made the construction not feasible. So we did the initial topo survey and then determined that it wasn't feasible to move forward, so we're canceling the design part.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
Move to approve the item.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Daniel and Darren. All right, so we have a motion and a second for approval of item 13. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 14 is a public hearing in consideration of an ordinance to rezone property located at 1414 North Kennedy Avenue from I-2 Light Industrial District to C3 Highway Commercial District, case number RZ07-22. Applicant Valor Pace, represented by Emily Tremblay. And Mr. Harkins is up. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you for asking. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this is a zoning request to go from I-2 to C3. Valir is a health company that is expanding services and adding on to their current capabilities in the community. And their representative is here tonight to answer questions that you might have as well. But this is an item that went before the Planning Commission on June 1st. It was recommended to you for approval on a 4-0 vote. This is using a existing building and taking a existing building and using it for a new life. So we're excited about that. Staff recommends approval as well, per the staff report. Do you have any questions that staff can answer at this time?
Anybody got questions? I don't. Seen lots of activity over there lately.
We got slow internet right now.
Yeah, I know.
It's
Killing me.
I think we're fighting internet issues, so we'll give them a minute. If you could, please.
I had to turn off the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Yeah, I mean, that property, been I-2 out there for years and years, and they changed a bunch of that to C3 with Homeland, and some of my buildings are there, and all that C3 down there to that.
Right.
So I don't know why that's still I-2.
Yeah.
The comp plan's calling for it to be C3 too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not surprising on that street.
Makes sense.
Any questions, or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Wait,
Thank
hold
you,
on,
sir.
it's a public hearing.
Oh,
Public hearing.
Thank you for catching that. So let's open the public hearing, see if there's anyone in here to speak in favor. Seeing none, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, then we will close the public hearing. Now we'll go to a motion. Does that still stand, Mark? Okay.
I'll second.
I think that was Daniel down the end. All righty. Joe, you were up, sir. You got a long one.
Yes, sir. An ordinance concerning the zoning classification of the following described property located within the corporate limits of the city of Shawnee, Pottawattamie County, Oklahoma, to wit, Tract 1A, Tract 1, a tract of land described as beginning at the northeast corner of the northwest quarter of Section 13, Township 10 North, Range 3 East of the Indian Meridian, Pottawattamie County, Oklahoma. Thence west 292.35 feet, thence south 298 feet, thence east 292.35 feet, thence north 298 feet to the point of beginning. Tract 2 commencing at the northeast corner of the northwest quarter of Section 13, Township 10 North, Range 3 East of the Indian Meridian, Pottawattamie County, Oklahoma, thence south 89 degrees, 17 minutes, 32 seconds west along the north line of the northwest quarter of said Section 13, and the basis for the bearings in the following described tract, a distance of 292.35 feet to the point of beginning, thence south 0 degrees, 32 minutes, 8 seconds east, and parallel with the east line of the northwest quarter of said Section 13, a distance of 298 feet, thence south 89 degrees, 17 minutes, 32 seconds west, and parallel with the north line of the northwest quarter of said Section 13, a distance of 73.09 feet, thence west north 0 degrees, 32 minutes, 8 seconds west, and parallel with the east line of the northwest quarter of said Section 13, a distance of 298 feet to the north line of the northwest quarter of said Section 13, thence north 89 degrees, 17 minutes, 32 seconds east along the north line of the northwest quarter of said Section 13, a distance of 73.09 feet to the point or place of beginning from zoning classification I2, Light Industrial District, to C3, Highway Commercial District, amending the official zoning map of the city of Shawnee accordingly.
Thank you, sir. All right, so we have a motion and a second for approval of item 14. We'll call that question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 15, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance to rezone property located on approximately 8.79 acres north of West MacArthur Street and east of Acme Road from R3 Multifamily Residential District and C2 Suburban Office Commercial District to a PUD planned unit development, case number PUD 01-22, applicant J. Bentley Investments, LLC, represented by Grubbs Consulting, LLC, deferred from the May 16, 2022 City Commission meeting. And Mr. Harkins, you're up again, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. This is a request to develop a PUD at this location. The applicant had asked for a deferral once before. Tonight, you'll notice on the staff report a second request for a deferral. This time to the August 18th City Commission meeting. The applicant has submitted their preliminary plat to staff for review, and after a number of discussion points between staff and the applicant, they have asked for this deferral in order to make sure that the statement of intent for the PUD matches the proposed preliminary plat completely. So for the sake of that additional time, hence the request for deferral.
Alrighty.
Staff is supportive of this request at this time.
Alrighty. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I move to defer to the August 18th meeting.
Thank you, sir. Need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, so Joe gets saved a little reading there.
This is true.
All righty.
Or at least delay it.
At least delay it until August 18th. Okay, so We have a motion and a second to defer to the August 18th meeting. We'll call that question. And that will be deferred, 7-0. All righty, item 16, consideration of an ordinance amending portions of Shawnee Municipal Code, Chapter 26, Utilities, by adding and adopting a public safety fee and providing for repealer, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date. Mr. Foos is up.
Good evening again, Mayor and Commissioners. This is the first of 4 items related to a proposed public safety fee. If you'll recall, at the June 6th Commission meeting, there was an administrative report to discuss the need for additional firefighters within our fire suppression division. The need is to increase urgently from 48 firefighters to 51 firefighters if possible. The administrative report provided information on funding options. One of those was a long-term sustainable option, the public safety protection districts, which we heard about earlier this evening. Another is a temporary funding source, which we have here now, which is a public safety fee which would apply to every utility account. The proposed fee is $1.65 per account per month. With approximately 11,700 active utility accounts, the fee would provide an estimated $231,000 per year. Those funds would allow for the hiring of 3 additional firefighters to bring the fire suppression division to a total of 51 firefighters. It would also provide the necessary funding for the equipment and gear for those additional firefighters. The public safety fee as proposed would become effective August 1st, and we would begin receiving those funds September 1st as part of the billing cycle. With that, for the upcoming fiscal year, that would generate approximately $193,000. If the respective ordinances and resolutions for the public safety fee are approved, a budget amendment would be brought back at a subsequent city commission meeting for consideration to recognize that increased revenue and appropriate the expenditures. With that, I also wanted to highlight the temporary nature of this. Within the ordinance is the language, the fee shall be reviewed and evaluated annually by the city commission.
Right.
So that it's at front of mind for all of us. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody got questions for Jacob?
So what would be the absolute earliest we would be able to move forward on hiring these new positions?
We were discussing that earlier today and are still trying to hammer out that timeline, but it would be as close as possible to when that fee was implemented, the August-September timeline.
Right. We've been advertising for that one position, and hopefully we've had multiple people apply for that, so hopefully we already have a pool of applicants.
That is certainly a consideration, yes.
So this would be four new hires, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
4 new, this would be for 3.
Well, I mean,
Plus the
plus the
Plus the
one
one
currently
already got.
got.
3 new and 1. Yes.
Yeah.
One to get us where we're out of the hole and 3 more to get us heading in the right direction.
When you say, you highlighted it, and I appreciate that, because we need to find long-term sustainable. When you say reviewed, can we define that? Because review could be city staff going, yeah, it looks good. Or, I mean, I don't think that's what we intend, and I think we need to make that clear. I think I'm only comfortable if it has to be voted and approved or reapproved.
I would defer to the city attorney
Sure.
for that.
I just want to make it real clear for folks.
It's reviewed and evaluated annually by city commission, so that's gonna put it right back on you guys. That would not be a staff level decision. That would require an agenda item and a discussion and potential action of this board.
So basically stating that if for some reason other options did not materialize, we could keep moving forward with this to maintain the positions that we have.
It would have to come back to us every year.
I would assume that would be a
to
part
be
of the
approved.
budget process, where we would have to reapprove it as we approve the budget.
As it's drafted annually, it would come up on an anniversary date, which happens to coincide with the budget.
Right.
but it's not necessarily directly tied to that.
But recognizing the temporary nature of this so that each year we're not looking to this to increase. Now we need more firefighters, so we add $5 more, so we're not looking for this as a long-term solution, increasing utilities.
Absolutely, yes.
But gets us out of the emergency situation now.
Yes.
Yeah, I see this more as a Band-Aid right now.
Yeah.
And I presume that the ones after this are just anybody that has a account gets billed?
Yes, so this applies to
So,
water
I mean,
accounts.
I noticed this sanitation, and so if you just have sanitation, you're still gonna get the $1.65.
Yes, sir.
What about the ones that have no accounts with it that are in the city limits?
They would not be covered under this. And that's when a more sustainable solution like a public safety.
Then again, I mean, I'm one of them, so it's not fair to not bill me something.
And it is a Band-Aid solution. It is not a permanent funding source for public safety purposes. But for the current situation that we find ourselves in, this will get us to where we need to be. All the while we're searching for that permanent replacement with a recurring funding source.
Anybody else got questions? Everybody good? Benny, you good down there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure everybody had the opportunity. Alrighty, so let's see, we could entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
Cammy and Travis, okay. And then Joe is up. This one's not as long.
No, Mr. Mayor, not at all. An ordinance amending portions of the Shawnee Municipal Code, Chapter 26, Utilities, by adding and adopting a public safety fee and providing for repealer, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have motion and a second for approval of item 16. We will call the question. And motion passes 7-0. Item 17, consideration of resolution updating the fees, city fee schedule by setting the monthly rate of the public safety fee pursuant to Chapter 26, Article 3, Division 2, Subdivision 3, Subsection 26-174 of the City Code and providing an effective date. And it's still your floor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, the previous item established that we could charge a fee in ordinance. This establishes the fee rate in the city fee schedule at $1.65 per month per account.
Thank
Happy
you,
to answer
sir.
any questions.
All right, pretty well what we've just talked about. Anybody got a question, or do you have a motion?
Move to approve item 17.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Thank you. All righty, Joe, you are up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution updating the city fee schedule by setting the monthly rate of the public safety fee pursuant to Chapter 26, Article 3, Division 2, Subdivision 3, Section 26-174 of the City Code, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, sir. All righty, we have motion and a second for approval of item 17. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 18, consideration of an ordinance amending portion of the Shawnee Municipal Code, Chapter 23, Solid Waste, by adding and adopting a public safety fee and providing for repealer, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date. All righty, I bet it's just more the same, isn't it?
Just real quick, this is, just to clarify, as Commissioner Seahorn pointed out, this is for users who only have solid waste sanitation services.
And just to get on the record, customers won't be double billed.
Yep.
It's
I'm glad you asked
absolutely
that.
correct. They'll only get one.
Yep, so. Very good. All right, any other questions? If not, we'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve item 18.
All righty,
I'll second.
thank you, sir. We have a Motion is second, and Joe, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance amending portions of the Shawnee Municipal Code, Chapter 23, Solid Waste, by adding and adopting a public safety fee, and providing for repealer, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much. All righty, we have a motion and a second for item 18 for approval, and we will call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 19, consideration or resolution updating the city fee schedule by setting the monthly rate of the public safety fee pursuant to Chapter 23, Article 2, Section 23-28 of the city code, providing an effective date and providing for the readoption of the city fee schedule in whole. And it's got your name again, but I just bet it's, I mean, we're just dealing with the same thing.
Yes,
So
sir.
has anybody got any questions that have come up, Jacob, or would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Have a motion.
I'll second.
For a second, Daniel. All righty, thank you, sir. And Joe, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution updating the city fee schedule by setting the monthly rate of the public safety fee pursuant to Chapter 23, Article 2, Section 23-38 of the city code, providing for an effective date and providing for the readoption of the city fee schedule in whole.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second for approval of item 19. We'll call the question. Item 20, consideration of a resolution declaring certain real property located at 419 North Kickapoo as surplus and no longer needed for city purposes, describing said property and authorizing staff to advertise for sealed bids for the sale of said property. And Mr. Barkheimer's up again.
Yes, sir. So this should be a pretty familiar process to you guys. We've done it a couple of times over the last year. And this really applies for the next two items, so item 21 as well. This first property was acquired as part of the Kickapoo right-of-way acquisition process. We've retained the necessary easement, and staff doesn't have a reasonable utilization of the property, so we're asking for surplus. Staff asked for support of the item, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Okay. Any questions? Entertain a motion if we don't have any questions.
Move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
All right, Darren and Mark. All right, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution declaring certain real property within the corporate limits of the city of Shawnee, Pottawattamie County, Oklahoma, to wit, lots 7 and 8 of the amended plat of Block 5 of the amended plat to the city of Shawnee, also known as 419 North Kickapoo, surplus and no longer needed for city purposes, describing said property and authorizing staff to advertise for sealed bids for the sale of said property.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second to approve item 20. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 21, consideration of resolution declaring certain real property located at 412 South Kickapoo Avenue as surplus and no longer needed for city purposes, describing said property and authorizing staff to advertise for sealed bids for the sale of said property.
Yeah, pretty much carbon copy of the last
Yeah,
item, different
just
parcel,
different
but with
address.
that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Anybody got any questions on this one? No. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Thank you, ma'am. All righty, one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution declaring certain real property within the corporate limits of the city of Shawnee, Pottawattamie County, Oklahoma, to wit, lots 5 and 6, Block 2, Inglewood addition to the city of Shawnee, also known as 412 South Kickapoo, surplus and no longer needed for city purposes, describing said property and authorizing staff to advertise for sealed bids for the sale of said property.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have motion and a second for approval of item 21. We'll call the question. And that passes 7-0. Item 22, acknowledge monthly sales tax and budget reports. Jacob's going to have good news. I can just sense it.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, sales tax for this month is, although slightly down from prior year. For the year in total, we're ending above prior year's actuals by about 5.42%. So that is good news. As far as expenditures go, our general fund is within budget. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So this was May.
Go ahead.
June, actually. This is the last received. Beginning of June is when we received the last.
Go ahead.
100,000 from last year.
For April,
April.
April.
yes.
No, yeah, not
April
May.
receipts.
June numbers for April.
Okay,
Yes.
for April. And what was the down?
Down from prior year, 5.23% from the prior month or prior year.
So 5.23 versus last April, then we're down.
You were saying even though we're down from last April, we're still above projections on this month?
Projections, yes. Projections were rather low. We budgeted very conservatively at the beginning of the year, not knowing what would come.
Any other questions? No? Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have administrative reports on Santa Fe Depot. Mr. Harkins.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Ryan Harkins, Community Development. We wanted to give you more of a 10,000-foot overview of the results of the visioning process. Just to recap, we first outlined this process in May at the first commission meeting. The process included the webpage, it included an online survey, a town hall series of meetings, and a listening session. We had about 133 people attend those sessions. Some of those were people who attended multiple sessions. And then we had meetings with different community groups where we talked about this process and some of the research that had been done. The town hall meeting boards, if you were here, you saw at the town hall sessions a number of different stations you could rotate through. Those boards have been put on the website so people could download those and look at them on their leisure. The town hall meeting process included an overview of the visioning process, and why we were doing it, a review of the ownership and timeline, as well as building use over time. It included a summary of the current conditions, and that was one set of boards by itself. And then what some of the other funding resources could be for rehab, in addition to some of the research and examples of reuse of different depots around the country, large and small. The handout that was provided at those sessions regarding some of the background information was also available on the city's website. So with regard to the town hall meetings, we mentioned different stations. One of them was a series of boards that focused on what the different research as far as alternatives and reuse options could be. Participants were given an opportunity to do a preference survey and rate each of those categories on a series of very scientific rating system, highly scientific rating system, from poor to great, with neutral being in the middle. And so you see on this slide the results of that type of preference. That's for each category. Mind you that those who attended the meetings were often able to, if they desired to, vote multiple times too. So we did not track how many times one individual voted. We tried to ask them to just vote one time. When you look at that great category, as far as those who said this function was great, you also see a pattern of museum and then other uses besides a museum that comes to about a 50-50 split. And so it was very indicative of the discussion as a whole and in the process. We also gave individuals at the listening session in the town hall meetings a chance to provide a comment or ask a question. We compiled all of those. They are posted on the city's website. There were 88 responses from those meetings. They ranged all over the place from, have you thought of this? Could you do that? Could this be a possibility, to just statements about different uses. We tried to provide a response to all of them. I think except for the question of why do birds sing? We ignored that one, other than saying thank you for your comment. The online component had 6 questions, and that was available and linked through the city's website as well. It was a month-long survey process. Each question had different options, and the one that got the most probably attention and input was the multiple option about different uses. The single greatest use indicated as a preference was a museum. However, other options did take a number of votes as well, and you could choose multiple options on this question. We'll show that graphically in a second, but we wanted to give you an idea in terms of bullet points. 980 people indicated a preference for other functions combined. So here's the first question. Do you know where the depot is? We figured if you answered no, this might not be a discussion you want to get too involved with, but by and large, most people said yes. One person actually skipped the question. Have you been inside the depot? And then we asked them when basically they were in the building last. We also asked, are you familiar with the condition report that was done by GH2 Architects? And that had a range of answers. We also had a link for that study so people could download it and look at it as well. The next question was, have you watched the study session that was done in December about the depot? And again, that was a range of questions. The link to that YouTube meeting was made available on the project website as well. And then we got to the next question, again, about the most appropriate use. And so we wanted to show this graphically in this manner, just to give you an idea about how each use broke out individually, just so you could see the range of options that people picked. Included in that was not only a museum, but restaurant, visitor center, indoor playground was a potential use, and then other. You can see the difference in the spread between one single use versus others. And then there was question 6. Question 6 was an open-ended question, and it basically said, do you have any other comments or thoughts you would like to share? This is where respondents could put anything they wanted. We received, and this was the most skipped question, by the way, we received 368 responses. Answers have been posted today on the city's website for that question as well. We did some minimal redaction because we wanted to basically take out anything that was personally identifiable information with regard to a name, email address, things of that nature. I bet everything else is there. So the responses to the other survey questions have been posted on the city's website as well. The answers or comments on question 6 have been, and then the comments and questions from each of the town hall meetings have been posted as well. So here's some of the other feedback we got in terms of what we got online and what we got in person. You'll notice some very distinct similarities. 1, fix or save the building. Do what you can do to protect the structure. Find uses that complement each other. Describe a timeline for repairs. Connect this building with downtown as a whole in its revitalization. Keep working together, keep collaborating with stakeholders to find funding sources and to do more. So with that, here are some of the key takeaways that staff saw in this process. 1, find a way to preserve the depot. That was one thing we heard over and over, even to the point that we had to work to remind people that it wasn't about if we were going to take down the depot and demolish it or not. It was a matter of what's the best way to preserve it and move forward with uses. Utilize the building as a draw to downtown was the second takeaway. The third is continue to honor Shawnee's history. That was a comment we heard quite often. Whatever we do, find a way to honor the history of this community. And then we also noted here on the last bullet point that there is support within the community to combine revenue generating opportunities with the museum and community space. We heard, especially as the process went on, how could we combine things together? And this wasn't something staff put out, this was something staff heard from community members that attended those meetings. So some of our next steps, working with the commission to finalize a vision statement for this iconic structure, working with community stakeholders to develop funding and marketing strategies. How do we go forward with a good, solid vision in order to obtain additional potential funding sources and secure them? And then looking at how we start to schedule design and construction phasing with any design professionals that we use. And then finally, how do we incorporate this into larger pieces of a revitalization strategy for the downtown? With that, I'd be open to any questions you might have.
Any questions?
When are we starting the process of the next steps that we talked about?
We can start to already now and tomorrow morning look at some potential funding sources and working at starting to craft a final vision for what we do next and how we combine uses together. There'll obviously be a number of crucial discussions that have to take place with different community stakeholders in order to finalize what that would look like in order to best put a strategy together to go after additional funding. But that will be an ongoing process.
Anyone down here?
Primarily falling within the staff's duties, the next steps that you're
We would be
describing?
we would be taking that role on primarily, and then as others wanted to be involved or would like to be involved, we would certainly include them as desired. So it's not something we would try and exclude anyone out of, but we would certainly be open to inviting them along, but staff would be more than happy to take that next step and lead that process.
Is there a plan in place, or is there an option for a plan in place as we're continuing to look for next steps and build a larger game plan for the complete revitalization of the depot, to look for any repairs or preventative maintenance that we can do to, much like the unstopping of the drains and things like that, that just after touring it and having conversations with with Ken and others, I don't want to see this take another year, and then while we're taking another year's worth of
Sure.
damage taking place.
We can certainly look at what we could start to pursue now, as funding allows, to start taking steps to do different projects to make repairs. So it's not a matter of an either or, it's a matter of how we best start to take different
Right.
steps
And I don't want to
simultaneously.
spend money that we're going to turn around and redo, but at the same time, there's just, some intentional thought process might be able to keep some things from getting worse without spending a ton of money, you
Sure.
know? Yeah, sorry.
And then, just to reiterate, we had been approached during the town hall meetings about the idea to tarp the depot.
Mm-hmm.
Getting up on the roof and getting up on brittle clay tiles is probably not in the best way.
Right.
So there there is little that can be done immediately. We do have the remainder of the 400,000 that was set aside as a starting point for repairs, but that building envelope, there's not a whole lot of phasing possible within just that envelope rehabilitation.
Yes, and it doesn't seem smart to spend money that you're gonna have to redo later or throw, but at the same time, just in some intentional conversations might be some little things to make big differences, like the drain that apparently was a huge difference. So.
Correct.
Can we request periodic updates at the commission meeting about the process?
I
as
would
it
be
moves
happy
along?
to do that.
Maybe on a monthly basis, or just, even if it's just quick updates about the process that's being made.
I'm happy to do that. Staff's intention is not to let this sit. We're going to keep pushing, so.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Anybody got anything else, Ryan? Good. I guess we're good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're down to 24, new business.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. All righty. 25 is commissioners' comments. Daniel, how about we start down your end?
Sure. We covered a lot of ground tonight. I saw Mr. Young just stepped out, but want to express gratitude to the Young family and all the members of the Dunbar Heights Committee. Was able to brought my family down the parade and then went to the prayer service, and the prayer service was very impactful to stand around with many of our fellow citizens and pray for all the different aspects of our community, and so enjoyed all the effort that so many put in to make that a great day, and so thank you to all of them. Couple things, really good news on the Performator, and I think we should really take that in. We've passed a lot of cities in our community, or in our area, in our financial health, and staff has played a huge role in making sure that happens in very challenging times. So thank you to all of them. Thank you to staff on all of their work on the budget to get it out early, and it wasn't rushed. It was thought through, and I'm excited about where we're at, and I think it's a huge deal for Shawnee. The 2% reserves that we put in is a measure of health that's been recommended, and we've been able to implement that. And so certainly with uncertain economic times, to have that reserves the first time in the city of Shawnee, that's a big deal. I think in both presentations tonight, we heard the importance of buying local. It's not just something we say, it really makes a difference in our ability to expand and grow. But then I think you also hear that with existing businesses, you can only grow so much. And so the importance of being a community that attracts businesses to it to give us a platform to further grow is a big deal. One quick thing, I want to send a special thank you to Mr. Barkheimer. Was it the last meeting? Or I think it was the last meeting. We had a case with Ms. Scott, and thankfully someone gave her my contact. She reached out a couple days later and said, you and your staff were amazing in helping her get her permit, and she wanted to express her thank you. And so from me as well, thank you for the care and concern that you give to people every day. I think this was just a really great example of our staff going above and beyond, and probably what you do every day. And this one, someone just happened to call and say thank you. So Seth, just wanted to highlight your staff, and that was awesome. Quickly, and the last thing on the depot, I think it was great to see that the key takeaways and a lot of the feedback line up with what I think what Commissioner Ingalls and I have spoken with the Historical Society about, and kind of found a framework. And so I think that provides a runway where we can go. And I think we have partners who are ready to get around the table. I see Mr. Landry in the back, and make this vision become a reality. One thing I would encourage us to look at is that as we move on the depot, we include Beard Cabin in these discussions. It's certainly a historic piece sitting right behind the depot. It also is in need of some care and concern, or care, and we've had those conversations with the city manager, and so I'd love to see us take one big swing and push across the line in good partnership, something that our entire community can be really proud of, and that is a draw. And I think those takeaways provide us a great roadmap, and so let's do it.
I think a common theme has been over the last several months just how much we can accomplish when we work together as a community. We've had some eventful conversations over things like the depot and the fire staffing issues, but it seems like staff and the commissioners and the community really, when they're needed to come up with a solution, that we're able to work together to find the solutions. And if we can keep calm, cool heads about us, we usually work really well to find those. So I'm impressed that we already have a solution, at least temporary in nature, to get the fire department fully staffed so that we can have those guys safe and we can open back Fire Station 2. I really enjoyed attending the Juneteenth festivities. I went to the morning things, the parade, and then the prayer service. And I actually got to see a new part of the Historical Society. There's a neat little theater in there, and some of the Dunbar Heights community came and explained some of the photos that Ken had, and that was really educational. They talked about making that a bigger part next year. And so I really love seeing the Historical Society team up with Dunbar Heights, and CPN was involved, and that's kind of what I want to see for the community going forward, is us working together to solve those problems. Just a quick reminder, we have an election coming up. We all have to be neighbors after that election. So just a reminder that we're all still neighbors. We all have to live next to each other after this is over, no matter who you vote for. And it's been an honor sitting up here no matter what happens. So thank you.
I'm one of the amazing things about stepping into this position, whether it be councilman or the mayor or city manager or attorney or any of our amazing staff, is along with inheriting all of the good that is part of Shawnee, we also inherit all of the bad, and acknowledging that things were not done right, but then not only acknowledging them, but figuring out how to move forward sometimes is a lot easier said than done. And after conversation after conversation, I never think there's any ill intent, any decisions made in the past. Just unfortunately, there weren't good options, or the option that they thought at the time was going to have a better outcome. And sometimes it's, until you sit right here, it's really hard to understand that. And I'm very thankful for how we have responded to some pretty big issues in the last couple of months. Things that could possibly cause us to lose some very important history of who we are and how we came to be, but then also things that could cost us a life if the amazing men and women who are part of our emergency services do not have the resources or the human power to do their jobs well. And understanding the gravity of that is unbelievable. Nobody wants to increase anything right now, whether it be taxes or fees, or because we're already strapped as a city and as a community, but understanding that sometimes those things have to happen for the greater protection of our people, and then also the greater protection of the people that are serving us. Could not imagine doing my job without the basic things that I need, or with not having enough people on my team to do my job well. And I'm thankful that we're walking towards doing both of those, creating not only intentional ways to help remember our past, but then also ways to protect our future. And so I'm very thankful for the commissioners and Mayor Bolt for working on this. I'm very thankful for the city staff for putting in the hours and taking the blows. I'm very thankful for our people in the community for standing up and saying, this is important to us. Please hear our voices, and we've been able to do that. And so there's a lot of good things that have happened. Oh my goodness. Juneteenth was an amazing thing to be a part of. I did not know one thing about Juneteenth until I moved to Shawnee and began my work with the amazing folks in the Dunbar Heights community before I became a commissioner. And understanding the history, understanding the hope and the pride that so many families have in that, it's unbelievable. And I got to go to 3 events this weekend and do some amazing things. And the partnership with CPN for the celebration on Thursday night was amazing. And then, on Friday night was amazing. And the parade was unbelievable. The prayer service was just, goodness gracious. If you didn't feel like you were good to go after that prayer service, there's something bad wrong with you, I promise you. But then my favorite was sitting in the Historical Society Museum and Ken showing us the slideshow of the Dunbar Heights families and their some of the amazing things. And when you talk about history and the world and who we are and where we came from, I was amazed to hear Rick Young say that in that slideshow he saw 5 pictures of his dad that he'd never seen before, and that how he got to celebrate and relive the life of his amazing father by watching that slideshow. And that's something that even though I had very little to do with, other than just showing up and being able to celebrate that with him, I felt pride in our city, I felt pride in our historical society, and I felt pride in the amazing thing that is that Juneteenth celebration. So thank you all for being, who you are, and I pray that we continue to do our best to love and support each other in all of this.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Two of the common themes, it seems like this, it's always a common theme, funding. We need funding. Sales tax, as they explained earlier, is our only source of income here. We have a new opportunity. After tonight, we kind of put a temporary Band-Aid. We got 3, where we can get 3 guys on the fire department. And that's not permanent. The property tax option is now available to us. But people, I hope everyone understands, Joe will have to tell me if I'm correct. We can vote to put something on a ballot, or it can be done by petition to be placed on a ballot. But the city can't campaign. We can put it on a ballot, but it's going to be someone else's thing to campaign to support these. The entity of the city can't campaign. Am I correct in that statement?
You were accurate in that statement.
Yes, thank you. So I think that's there's grant funding. There's those options out there. So I hope we can find a path forward to get that done. I know if someone came to me, I would probably be willing to, put it on a ballot. The depot's in the same, well, we need funding. It's gonna have to come from grants. There's so many things that we have to pay for out of our sales tax, so there's $1.5 million there. One of the options is, like the hotel motel tax. That could be looked at again possibly for the future, or something that didn't work well. It didn't work well the first time, but, there's just options that I hope everyone understands. We're looking at all of those, and hopefully we can find a path forward. Everyone needs to keep shopping Shawnee and getting the sales tax going, and we can keep moving forward. But there are options. We just got to figure them out, and we're going to need help, and it's going to take the whole community working together. There's only so much the city can do. Everyone else has got to help participate in the rest of it. That's all I know.
All right, thank you, sir.
Glad to be able to get the missing fire personnel on staff. We know we just kind of have a temporary Band-Aid on it, and I know we're looking for ways to fund it long-term. The financial condition of the city, the report they gave us is a huge difference from what it was 4 years ago. We're setting really, really well compared to what we were 4 years ago, and that, kind of to the city managers we've had, to Jacob, the people that's been in charge of the financing to kind of get us back. No doubt CARES Act money and ARPA, has definitely helped, but take that out of the equation, there's still a substantial difference on what we have. Sales tax revenue has definitely been good. We've been, last couple of months, been off a little bit, but you got to figure, Benny mentioned it a while ago, as far as the federal income tax was about the same time, got postponed last year, 90 days, to where, that could be some of the dip. The other concern is fuel costs being as they are, and we don't get any sales tax money off fuel, so that's taking spendable income out of it. But on the other side, I think we're seeing probably people staying local or shopping online instead of driving to do it. So hopefully that'll keep the trends like it is. The depot, we're gonna need additional funding, no doubt. It's been here, I've lived here all my life. My grandparents moved here in the 20s. We definitely want to preserve it, but it's going to cost a lot of money to preserve it. And I think local community individuals, if we have a plan, I think you'll have a lot of individuals step up to help fund that. But they want some kind of plan before, we need to go to the community, and I'm sure there's grants and things of that nature also. Benny?
I like the direction that the staff is taking us as far as the fire department. We can get number 2s back open now, and that will stop the phone calls, I'm hoping. And the $1.65, that's, I guess I could say chicken feed compared to a municipality west of Oklahoma City last year. Did the same thing for streets, but they charged $20 a month. And so for the $1.65, and then as Commissioner Rutherford said, the commission is, or the town, the city, everyone is gonna have to get behind it and vote yes to where we can, I think that would be a good incentive if you want that off of your water bill, vote yes on the bond issue. And so, and I agree with nearly everything else that's been said. So, that's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, I don't have a whole lot. Juneteenth events were amazing. Friday night, it was so good to be down at the CPN for that event and see all the diversity in the crowd and everybody, just the spirit of cooperation and that was an amazing event. That's probably one of the best events I think I've ever been to here around Shawnee. So it was really great to see. And then I did the events on Saturday too. But that was just a really, really good thing. And I really hope that Shawnee can become one of the really important places in Oklahoma where those events are held. And I think we're getting headed in the right direction on that. But it was really good to see everybody out for those. And you know, you told a story about Rick Young and pictures of his dad. He told a story Saturday night as they were closing up that he saw those old pictures, and I guess there was a young girl that he saw, and he said, well, that girl's kind of cute, and someone said, well, that's your mom. So anyway, I know he got to see some family photos that he hadn't seen in a long time. Good news on the Performator. That just seems to go better and better every year, which I'm glad to see. We're headed in the right direction financially, which I had no doubt that we were, but that just bears that out. Rob had a number of questions about homeless. You know, I don't know that just sending the paddy wagon down and just clearing out Main Street solves anything. For one thing, those folks will be out of jail in a day. Although, even before we get to that, it's not illegal to be homeless. It's not illegal to be poor. And just trying to haul them all off, throw them in the jail, that all of us that end up paying for their night up there at $60 a head or whatever it is that we get charged to do that, and then have them right back out on the street. That just goes back to playing whack-a-mole, which we've done around here for over the last 100 years. And this is where it's gotten us. So recently, we have started working a homeless program, and we have a homeless services coordinator, and we are doing a coordinated, data-driven effort that it would probably be good if maybe you learned a little bit on what we are trying to do, and to see that it's much more of a long-term solution than just simply arresting people, throwing them in jail for something, and then having them back out on the street the next day. There was a question about the Expo meeting, or the Expo board meeting. You'd probably have to ask that to the Expo board. We are not the Expo board. We don't go to their meetings. We have a representative that goes to their meeting, but we're not, this isn't their meeting. We don't know. I can't speak to that. You would need to ask them. Same thing with the question for Shawnee Forward. We are not Shawnee Forward. If you have a question about a meeting and how they conduct their meetings, then I would invite you to go to the Shawnee Forward meeting and ask that question. But I'd really invite you to learn more about our homeless program, because we really have a program now that is well thought out. It's going to take time. We have been 100+ years doing what we were doing, playing whack-a-mole. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to take this logically, and it's going to be data-driven, and it's going to be on proven methods that are being done in hundreds of communities around the country and have been successful, and we're going to have a real solution. So those would be my answers to the questions that you had for us. We had a fire vote that we did tonight to add the firefighters, and you know, that's, as a lot of us said, a Band-Aid. We'll look for a long-term solution. This group of folks up here, we've not shied away from any tough questions, and we've had a number of those the last few months. And You know, there'll be some folks that are gonna be upset with us because we made their utility bills go up a little bit tonight. But, you know, we have folks that are upset because, you know, we're down a firefighter, and we wanted to add 3 more, and we found a way to do that. And this group will take on those questions, and we'll deal with them, and we'll come to a better resolution, I promise you. So we're gonna have to look at a longer-term solution. You know, if there's problems or there's been miscommunication from one city manager to the next, I would invite you to go see our current city manager and talk with her. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of things, our hands are tied on a lot of these things. We only get to vote and then approve these things. But I know our city manager's door is always open, and from what I know of her, and I've been very happy with her since we've hired her, she works very hard to resolve situations. It's a very serious thing, and the 7 of us up here are gonna take this very seriously, and we're gonna make it better. And hopefully we took a step tonight in the right direction, and the people of Shawnee will see that and realize that, you know, we wanna do all we can to help, and we're not done. So we'll keep moving forward. We appreciate you guys. I want you to know that, as every one of us and everyone in the community really appreciates you guys, and we wouldn't want to be without you, that's for sure. So we want to take good care of you. So thank you very much. With that, I've got to get back to my place in this big thick thing, and I think we move on to the Airport Authority, if I'm not mistaken.
We have,
Yeah, so we will recess and we will move to the Airport Authority. And then we come back. That's what we end up doing. So item 1 on the Airport Authority agenda is consider approval of consent agenda. Anyone have anything on that, or we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Daniel and Darren. All righty, so we have a motion and a second for approval of item 1. We'll call the question. And that passes 7-0. Item 2, consideration and approval of Shawnee Airport Authority budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. And Jacob is up again.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. This is for approval of the SAA budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Anyone got any questions? Anyone have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Daniel and Cammie, thank you, ma'am. All righty, we have a motion and a second to approve item 2. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 3, consideration of resolution adopting a budget for the Shawnee Airport Authority for the period of July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, finding all things requisite and necessary have been done in preparation and presentation of budget.
Yes, sir.
Not much more to say, probably, is there?
You're correct. Yep,
There
just
we
for the
go.
adoption of the budget.
Has anyone got a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, thank you very much. So Cammie and Mark, and Joe is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution approving and adopting the budget for the Shawnee Airport Authority, Oklahoma for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, finding all things requisite and necessary have been done in preparation and presentation of said budget.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second for approval of item 3. We'll call the question. And that motion passes 7-0. Item 4, consideration of resolution accepting a grant offer from the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, for the Improved Drainage Project number 3-40-0088-024-2022 for the Shawnee Regional Airport Tell that as an FAA number to be that long.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's a federal grant. That's why you have so much code associated with it. Very pleased to announce that we have been able to complete all the paperwork necessary to file a grant application with the Federal Aviation Administration. And with the help of my colleagues, I'm going to give Seth another big plug too, because Seth was the one who helped us to make sure we did the independent fee assessment, which was acceptable to the FAA to agree to the fees associated with the project and to program our request into the system. At a certain point, the FAA will receive permission from the United States Congress to issue out grant letters saying, would you like your money? If it gets too close to the end of the federal fiscal year, we have to turn those offers really rather quickly. So this particular request is to authorize the city manager to accept those grant funds when they are offered, execute the agreement, and send it back quickly so we don't miss the bus.
Very good.
Or the plane in this particular situation.
Yeah, we don't want to miss the plane. All right, any questions or not? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve item 4.
I'll second.
Daniel and Cammy. All righty, Joe is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution accepting a grant offer from the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration for the improved airport drainage project number 3-40-0080-024-2022 for the Shawnee Regional Airport.
Thank you, sir. All righty, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 4. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 5 is consideration of proposal that provide design engineering services in support of Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Airport Improvement Program for Improved Drainage Project number 3-40-0088-024-2022. And Ani, I bet it's the same thing we just talked about.
It's very similar, yes. Thank
Yeah.
you for the opportunity to explain this. Under the FAA regulations, they will reimburse airport sponsors for the fees for engineering services if you choose your engineering firm through a request for qualifications process. And an airport our size is allowed to engage a firm for a 5-year period. We engaged the Lochner engineering firm out of Oklahoma City. They've been working with us very closely on all our projects. And we have a master services agreement with them with a slate of rates per types of services offered. If we receive these grant funds, and then we would like to engage Lochner Engineering to help us do the design for this project based on that master agreement, we would do a specific addendum identifying the scope of work for the design and assessment portion. The not to exceed estimate at this stage would put the Shawnee Airport Authority's cost at $106,200. Wait, I'm sorry, I apologize, I got that backwards. That would be the FAA's portion would be the $106,200, and the Airport Authority's portion would be $11,800. And again, that is a not to exceed figure. We are going to be undertaking some investigation through the pipe system underground and determining the condition of those storm drains, and then creating a construction design based on what's found.
Anybody got questions? How about a motion?
I'll move we approve.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
All right, Travis and Cammy. All righty, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 5. We will call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 6, new business.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. And we adjourn, and we move on to municipal authority. Item 1, consider approval of consent agenda. Anyone have anything you want to talk about there, or could we get a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Daniel and Darren. Okay, we have motion and a second for approval of item 1. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 2, consideration of approval of Shawnee Municipal Authority budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Jacob, what you got there?
Yes, sir. If there are any questions on the SMA's budget for the approval, be happy to answer.
All right, anybody got any questions? How about a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, ma'am.
Second.
And Darren. All righty. Motion and second on to approve item 2. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 3, consideration or resolution adopting the budget for Shawnee Municipal Authority for the period of July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, finding all things requisite and necessary have been done in preparation and presentation of budget.
Yes, sir. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
All righty. Anybody got any questions?
Move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
And Mark and Joe is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution approving and adopting the budget for the Shawnee Municipal Authority, Oklahoma for the period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, finding all things requisite and necessary have been done in preparation and presentation of said budget.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve item 3. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 4, new business.
No new business.
Thank you, ma'am. We are adjourned. We will go back to city commission meeting. On the right page. It's in here somewhere. All righty, so we have item 26. Consider an executive session and possible action on the existing workers' compensation claim expenses for, Jeff Rogers as authorized by 25 OS 307B7 on the recommendation of council that public discussion would violate confidentiality requirements. So I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss this.
So moved.
Well, that was quick.
Yep.
I think you got it. So Darren and Travis. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to go into executive session on 26. We'll call the question. That's 7-0. We will go down the hall and we will be back in a minute.
I didn't until I walked into this building.
7, consider matters discussed in executive session regarding an existing workers' compensation claim expenses for Jeff Rogers as authorized by 25 OS 307B7 on the recommendation of counsel that public discussion would violate confidentiality requirements. So we have a motion that came out of session.
Sir, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize our city manager to make necessary purchases per the agreement.
All right. So do we have a second?
Second.
All righty. So Travis and Darren on for approval of item 27. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming.